Good Thursday morning and welcome back to Commentators Corner, final episode of the first semester. Tyler Reedy and Brennan Prizeman here with you for number 16. Wow, 16, that went by pretty quick. But here we are to wrap up semester number 1. Brennan, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty well. We finally, after a week or so of waiting, have a basketball game to call tomorrow. So super excited for that. Super excited that I have now taken the NFL predictions lead from your grimy, filthy hands, and I do not plan on giving that away in this podcast, but that's happening. The college football playoff is set, and my complaints are minimal, so that's good. And the NFL playoff race is really starting to heat up, so we got a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it, starting with the most pressing need. Prep plays basketball tomorrow, and we get to call it.
There you go. Yeah, Omaha Northwest is coming to the Hydra Center at 7 p.m. We will have the call for that one, and then Millard West comes to the Hydra on Saturday night. We'll have Alex Tejan on the mic for play-by-play. I'll be doing color for that one. That one also at 7 p.m. We'll be streaming that one as well. So back-to-back home games. We were talking before the podcast. I don't think we ever had home games on back-to-back days last year, so should be pretty exciting. Fun way to start the year, and after last weekend, all the drama, we'll see if Prep can, pull away a little bit, beat some teams convincingly, because both Northwest and Millard West aren't expected to be too good this year. But you never know. I mean, this team has certainly given us a couple heart attacks to start the year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the nice thing about this, and I've made this sentiment fairly clear to a couple of people, is that last year, especially against a team like Bell West, who Prep lost to 3 times, twice in overtime, you didn't really have a guy who could finish. Like, you had a lot of really talented, really solid players, but it didn't look like any of them could step up when it mattered against Bell West. Bell West had 2 guys in Chucky Hepburn and Frankie Fiddler, who you knew were always going to step up when it mattered, always going to seize the moment and make the big play.
Mm-hmm.
And with Prep, I don't know whether it's partially the talent gap or partially the fact that there were just too many cooks in the kitchen, but they didn't appear to have that one guy who was like, okay, we're down 1, 10 seconds left, we need a bucket. Who's going to get it? There were like 4 or 5 guys on that team who could, but
nobody who absolutely would.
Yes, exactly. Like, you look at the state title game, Justin City missed a couple of free throws after being incredibly dependable all year. Luke Jungers had a couple of bad turnovers. I don't have the stats from that game in front of me, but I just remember Prep made 1 too many mistakes to win that game, and that's why Bell West won. Of course, that ended up tiring out Bell West because it was a 3-overtime marathon, and they lost to Millard Northern, but that's neither here nor there. But this year, you said last-second victories. A last-second victory is better than a last-second loss, even against teams where there's a talent gap. Neither Grand Island nor Lincoln East are in the top 10, but Martell Evans has really stepped up so far this year. I think, at least for right now, he's the best all-around player on the team until Luke Jungers starts to get going, which I think he will pretty soon. But Evans hit the game-tying 3 with 17 seconds to go against Grand Island. Then, after a steal by Ed Hubner, went full court for the game-winning layup at the buzzer. And then in the Lincoln East game, he had the ball in his hands again with time winding down with the game tied at 51. Drove, nothing there, so he kicked it out. Couple passes later, Sean Ramachandran was open. Got his first points of the night on the game-winning 3 with 1.3 seconds to go. So far it seems like Prep's got a lot of guys who can and will take those clutch shots at the end of games, and that's really nice to see.
Yeah, and one guy we need to mention, and I hope what he did last weekend can be sustainable going forward, but Joey Riechel's in his first season as a starter. He's in his first season on the varsity team, period, and in the Grand Island game, he had 11 points, and then Saturday he was fantastic. 15 points, 4 rebounds, 5 steals. I think that might be the most since Justin City had 8 in the first Papio South game last year. His hustle was fantastic. He was making some great drives to the paint. I love his aggressiveness from downtown. That's something Coach Lukey's been preaching all along. We've got to be more aggressive, take those threes, take those tougher shots potentially when they're available to us. And Joey Riechel, definitely a guy that's not afraid to do it. And it's really cool to see it paying off for him, and I hope he can continue going forward.
The injury to Casey O'Malley, he did suffer a sprained ankle in the first half of the Grand Island game. It hurts the team obviously, but Rischel appears to be built in that same kind of mold as Casey, shooting and defense style guy who can drive to the hoop if need be, tenacious on-ball defender. I think that they were putting O'Malley on Isaac Trout, the Virginia commit, in the Grand Island game.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, wow. You were there. You were, so you probably saw that. Or no, you weren't there, but
yeah, I watched the whole thing back. Yeah.
So, but it's good to have a guy like Rischel, because that was one thing that at least and I think you too, were concerned about heading into the year, is that, now with all those seniors gone, somebody's going to have to step up and take their place, and there aren't enough returning guys to do that all by themselves. So who's going to be the new guys to step up? And it looks like Rischel's going to do it. 13 points, 3.5 steals to start the year. I know it's early, but he's shooting 50% from three, 47% from the field. I also really like Ed Hubner. As I mentioned, he had the steal at the end of the game against Grand Island. He's averaging 2.5 points, 2.5 rebounds to start the year, 5 points against Grand Island. So I think that Prep's got a couple of really solid juniors, and I think that right now all of the seniors are doing a good job stepping up, and that makes Prep a really tough team to beat.
Yeah, so when you look at what Northwest brings in tomorrow night, they're still a team that's trying to come out of the basement of Class A. Last year they were 1-22. Only win was over Lincoln High in 2 overtimes, but they have a couple pretty good players. Mekhi Marks leads the team with 14.5 points per game, also leads in assists and steals. Mason Johnson has been a nice rebounder to start the year, averaging 8.5 along with 2 blocks. Both those lead the team. And then Isaiah Forte, another double figures average scorer, 10 points per game for him. So Northwest has had some more offense than they had to start last season. Granted, one of the games they've had to start the year was Burke, but the other one was Central, so it does balance out a little bit. But Prep, we know, can defend. They struggled a little bit. It was kind of off and on against Lincoln East. On one possession, they'd have airtight defense, but on another one, they'd let a free, easy back cut go. So we'll see how Prep can come out. They dominated Northwest defensively last year, holding them to 30 points.
Well, I think part of the key for that, those defensive issues for Prep, as you mentioned, I think it's just that it's early in the season.
Yeah.
It's always going to take a while for all the players to get fully set and used to each other, especially when you have a lot of guys who weren't getting this much varsity experience or any varsity experience last year. So I think that that'll be pretty useful. And as for Northwest, they look like a solid team, especially in the rebounding game. We'll mention more about that later, or tomorrow night in the pregame. But, yeah, the 3 guys you mentioned are the 3 guys that I had my eye on. I also think that Marlon Coleman, the guard, could potentially be a pretty solid player for Northwest if they're able to get the ball to him, because he's a pretty decent scorer himself. But, yeah, those 3 guys are definitely the primaries. Only 2 guys in double figures for Northwest, and it's too early to make a lot of judgments with stats, given that all these teams have only played 2 games, so the averages might be skewed a little bit, especially if somebody had a really hot shooting night or something. But it looks like they're a solid team. I don't think Prep should need to come down to the last second to beat these guys. If they do, I feel like there might be some problems.
Yeah, so Millard West Saturday night as well. They're coming off a state tournament run. They made it to the semifinals before being knocked out by Millard North, but I would say don't let that fool you, because they lost basically their entire production, at least starter-wise, last season. Evan Meyersick is gone. James Conway is gone. Dominic Hum is gone. They're having to kind of reset with some guys like Zach Grangenet and company, some guys that were first or second men off the bench last year, a lot like what Casey O'Malley was to Prep. So Millard West, definitely not as talented as last year, but they're one of those teams, kind of like a Millard South or Lincoln East, that's always going to play you hard, and it's a rivalry game. Prep and Millard West have gotten into it on the football field in some really good matchups, so that'll be a good one. I'll probably talk about it a little more on the post-game Twitter thing that I'll do after tomorrow night's game.
And then, real quick, you mentioned Millard West lost a lot of production. Yeah, their top 5 scorers from last year were all seniors.
Wow.
Nobody else had over 4 points a game. But, as you mentioned, they always play a team tough. They almost beat Prep last year on December 12th. It was a home game for them, and they just dragged Prep down into the mud. Prep shot 34% from the field, 11% from 3, which I'm not sure there's a worse 3-point mark in my time covering this team.
42-40, right?
Yeah. Prep shot 55% from the line, but out-rebounded the Wildcats 33-19. Had one more steal, forced a couple more turnovers than the Wildcats did, and this ended up being kind of Luke Jungers' coming out party. 12 points on 63% shooting, had one of the only decent-looking stat lines from that game. So I think that Jungers has a chance to have a pretty big game against the Wildcats again this year.
Yeah, and Jungers had the game-winning tip just before the buzzer in that one as well. So, yep, prep basketball, 2 games this weekend. We will have them both at 7 p.m. on the CP Sports Network. So we're excited for that one, but we're also excited for college football because we're getting into bowl season. Conference championships are wrapped up. Utah again blew out Oregon 38-10 in the Pac-12 game.
Absolute shocker. I don't know anyone who saw that.
Utah just owns the Ducks, I suppose. Big 12, you were at this game, and it was a game for the ages, or at least a last play for the ages. Baylor beating Oklahoma State 21-16 on the last play of the game, coming down to a dive for the pylon, a half yard short. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was something else. The SEC, another one that nobody expected. The whole consensus was that Georgia would just run straight through Alabama like they have everybody else, but that was not the case at all, as Bama took down the Bulldogs 41-24, but did lose John Mechie there. I would say probably number 2, but very close to number 1 wide receiver in the process. Jameson Williams, such a game breaker that he probably takes number 1. He had a big game, by the way, but Mechie is injured. The American Athletic Conference, Cincinnati, handled Houston 35-20. They'll be in the playoff at 13-0.
As they should be.
And the ACC, Pitt over Wake Forest, 45-21. What did you think of that Kenny Pickett fake slide thing? Because obviously it's a really smart play, but you have these things happening all the time where a quarterback goes to slide and the defender remains committed to the hit and gets a targeting penalty or unnecessary roughness. Yeah. Now you think, okay, he's going to slide. I've got to pull off. But he fakes. He can just go right by you. So that's a really advantageous position for the quarterback.
There's several fun things about that, but there's also several bad things.
Yeah.
First of all, did you watch the slow motion replay? How did his legs do that without something absolutely popping or snapping?
These guys are crazy. They're crazy athletes.
They're crazy athletes. Pickett is a Heisman finalist, I believe, this year, as he should be. He shouldn't win it, but it's reasonable to make him a Heisman finalist. Personally, I think Matt Araiza, the punter for San Diego State, should win it, but that's neither here nor there. But first of all, that's very dangerous for quarterbacks in the ACL way. And it's also dangerous for quarterbacks in the concussion way, because now if you're the defense, when you're thinking a quarterback goes to slide, you're thinking, well, I have to at least try to hit him, because if he does that fake thing, then I'm out of position. So I think that the inevitable conclusion to that is going to be somebody tries a fake slide and gets hit. So then the next time they go to slide, they actually slide. Defender doesn't realize it. Bam, all of a sudden, that's a concussion, a flag, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my goodness, why didn't the defender lay off? It's because they can't anymore. You could argue that Pickett discovered a loophole that is a very good loophole to exploit.
Yeah.
But the effects of that exploitation, I do not think will be good for football, at least in the short term.
Yeah, targeting's already been a questionable enough thing this year. Definitely going to have a thorough conversation about this aspect of the rules.
Would you just make fake sliding an unsportsmanlike conduct?
Yeah, that just becomes subjective, though, because I feel like it'd be really tough to tell in real time whether or not it's just a high step type of thing or an actual fake slide. So,
what's the difference between, a step back juke and when you're going down to slide it?
Yeah.
It is tough, but, you got to have player safety in mind, and
indeed.
This opens up a can of worms where, Bryce Young against Cincinnati is going to try that fake slide thing, and Sauce Gardner is just going to light him into or he's going to try to actually slide, but Sauce Gardner is going to light him into next week, and I know college football doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of college football, real quick before we get into bowl games, did you see the Mark Emmert stuff yesterday?
I don't think so, no.
Being a university president is the hardest
job. Oh, I did hear about that.
America.
I did hear that quote.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's right.
I saw this one tweet about it where I was like, it's Mark Emmert is really funny because most of the time you forget he exists, and then every couple of months or so he reemerges to remind you he's one of the worst humans ever. But yeah, Also, I think Texas is starting to do a new NIL thing, and that's making a lot of people very angry. They've got like this $50,000 thing set aside for offensive linemen, and people are like, "Oh no, oh they're paying players." Like, yes, yes, that's what name, image, and likeness is, folks. Welcome to the modern era where we're no longer exploiting college athletes for their bodies without paying them. You're welcome. Like, I feel like NIL was unanimously accepted at first, and now that it's actually starting to happen, fans of teams that aren't really getting that, like say a Kansas or a Missouri or a Colorado, are saying like, oh, well, look at Texas, they're just like paying players basically. That's part of the NIL deal. If players want to get paid and they can find someone who is able and willing to pay them, that's how America works. Like it or not, that's the free market capitalist system we live in. And the point of that is that if you can find someone willing to pay you for your work, then you go get that money. I'm okay with it. And I'm really interested to see how the Quinn Ewers battle goes, because I've heard he wants to transfer to a Texas team. I think it is final 3-year Texas, Texas Tech, and TCU. And we all know one of those schools has much deeper pockets than the other two.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the bowl games pretty quickly here so that we can get done with NFL picks and not have this go 55 minutes. But, well, we can't really do that.
I want it to go 55 minutes.
No, we can't do that. We got to keep it around 40 or something.
You're not fun.
Big Ten just around out the conference championships. Michigan over Iowa 42-3, a blowout there. And then looking into the bowl games, the playoff will have Cincinnati and Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. The Orange Bowl will be constituted by Georgia and Michigan. And then the rest of the New Year's Six, Fiesta Bowl, Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. That one should be interesting to kick off the Marcus Freeman era for the Irish. The Peach Bowl will have Pittsburgh and Michigan State, Kenneth Walker versus Kenny Pickett. That will be exciting. The Rose Bowl, Utah and Ohio State. Quite an unexpected matchup. I think a lot of people saw Ohio State in the playoff and didn't see Utah getting to a New Year's Six at all, but here we are.
Yeah.
Sugar Bowl, Baylor and Ole Miss. So definitely some matchups that are kind of new. Not as many of the standard Clemson type of teams.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of parity in the New Year's Six this year, which is good to see.
Two new teams in the playoff for the first time since I think 2015. So that is really good to see. And speaking of Clemson, they're playing Iowa State. Can't remember which bowl.
The Cheez-It Bowl.
The Cheez-It Bowl, yes. Like, imagine telling an Iowa State fan that they're going to play Clemson in the postseason this year before this year started.
He probably would have thought that
they'd probably be
12-0 or
right?
something.
They'd be like, we make the playoff? No, you make the Cheez-It Bowl. And then on the flip side, imagine telling a Clemson fan before the season started they'd be playing Iowa State. Iowa, Kentucky in the Citrus Bowl. That should be interesting to watch, mostly because of how horrid Iowa's offense will probably be. Sorry, Raz. And then UCF, Florida, I think will be interesting because Florida has very sharply fallen off, and I think UCF is still trying to prove that there's other Group of 5 teams besides Cincinnati that can still, beat the SEC or at least contend with them, and I think they'll be able to do that against a Florida team that is a bit of a dumpster fire right now.
Yep, and then Wake Forest A&M, that one could have some points to it. Penn State, Arkansas, Oregon, Oklahoma. So even outside the New Year's Six, we've got some enticing matchups.
There's a lot of good bowl games. This was one of the most fun college football seasons in recent years, just for the sheer amount of games that were fun, except for a Texas fan. They were entertaining, but
Texas fans, Nebraska fans.
Not fun.
Not quite.
Yep.
Speaking of not, were you gonna have one more about college football? Yeah. Speaking of not fun, I did not have fun with my NFL picks last week. I'm now trailing Brennan by a game. I think this might be the first time I've trailed you all season. It is. And of course, I had to wait until December when it's coming down to the wire to do it. But yeah, here we are. You're up by a game, so I am going to have you pick first, starting with the game tonight, Thursday Night Football.
I will just have you keep in mind, you had me pick first last week.
Well, I picked first the whole season up until last week. I'm just going to make it a rule because what I don't want happening is I don't want me, who's losing, picking first, and then you intentionally pick the same. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Like you picked the Lions or something. I was like, yeah, I like that. All right, so tonight, Steelers-Vikings. Steelers won a close game last week against the Ravens to stay in the playoff hunt. They are currently 8th. half a game. Well, I'm not sure how you classify this because they have a tie, but basically half a game back of Buffalo for the 7th seed right now. Buffalo plays Tampa Bay this week, which I'll get to later, so that could be a big chance for Pittsburgh to move up in the rankings. Steelers seem fairly lucky. They got the close win over the Ravens after the Ravens missed a 2-point conversion. And the Vikings, of course, are the Vikings. They can have no good things. They've been cursed by God. We know this by now. 24-21 Steelers.
You got the Steelers?
I do.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I want to go with Minnesota, but
it's Minnesota.
Pittsburgh, I feel like when you get to this time, I'll take Pittsburgh, yeah. 23-20 Pittsburgh. I mean, I want to go with the Vikings. Justin Jefferson has been really hot lately, and Kirk Cousins has been moving the ball around all right. But, I mean, they just lost to Detroit. I mean, what happened there? I mean, Pittsburgh, you get to this time of year, the defense starts stepping up, which they did against Baltimore last week. So, yeah, I'm going to rock with Pittsburgh, especially because it's a night game. And we all know what Kirk Cousins does there.
And the Steelers' run game normally starts to pick up around this time, too. So, next up, Ravens-Browns, an AFC North battle. The Ravens need a bounce back, and they get a Cleveland team that has, a lot of crazy stuff going on. I mean, the Odell Beckham saga was, 3-4 weeks ago, and it's already, past news?
Yeah.
I can't remember how long ago it was, but the Browns are not a good team. I mean, 2 weeks ago, the Ravens beat them after Lamar threw 4 interceptions. 4. You know how many games you're supposed to win if your quarterback throws 4 interceptions?
0.
Yes. Ravens, I think, need a bounce back after that Steelers game. They probably should have won that game. It was another ugly kind of slugfest as they get into the teeth of the AFC North. But they proved that they can win that game against the Browns 2 weeks ago. They'll do so again this weekend. Ravens over Browns 17-10.
Yeah, I just looked up the weather for Cleveland just in case, and it's going to be 42, sunny, kind of windy, but it's not going to be your typical, absolute mess in Cleveland. Yeah, exactly. So I do think Baltimore keeps the favored status because of that, and they'll win it 24-16 over Cleveland, who I just don't really trust given how injured they are offensively. I mean, what should we be expecting from Baker in that run game here?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Next up, another divisional battle, Jaguars versus the current 2nd seed in the AFC, the Tennessee Titans. Jaguars still somehow not eliminated from the playoff race at 2-10, but this game will take care of that. 28-10 Tennessee.
Yeah, should be pretty easy. We heard some news on Derrick Henry this past week that he could be back for something like week 17 or 18, which I sure hope not, because I don't want to run into you with him in the playoffs.
Oh, so you do admit you're frightened of my fantasy team.
I just hope he's on a pitch count. I mean, I did beat you with Henry in week 8, so
you got lucky.
Yeah, whatever.
You got lucky.
It was a 50-point win, but yeah. Anyway,
you got lucky.
Tennessee, with or without Derrick Henry, is miles ahead of Jacksonville. You just got to hope that they don't do what they did against Houston a few weeks back and just completely die on offense. I don't think they will, though. 27-17 Tennessee.
And as for Jacksonville, you got to hope they don't David Carr Trevor Lawrence because he has had a rough season, which you can't really blame him for. He's stuck in the worst situation possible. There's always those people who will say that the draft is a genuinely horrible system for sports leagues because it always sends your best prospects to situations that are bad, like really bad. And I think that's what's happening with Lawrence. But I think he might be one of those guys whose talent is good enough to overcome that. We'll have to wait until next year to truly find that out.
Yeah, when ETN gets back, see how that works.
Yeah, Raiders-Chiefs up next. It's a little too late for Mahomes to win MVP, but the Chiefs have locked into a 3-way tie for second in the AFC, half a game behind the Patriots. It's not too late to get home field for them. I think that this game will be a huge stepping stone towards that. I got 34-20 Kansas City.
34?
34.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if I trust the offense that much, but the defense has certainly been the story, and I don't see the Raiders scoring more than 2 touchdowns in this one. Harrison Butker will probably be busy kicking field goals because, again, the offense is, they can move the ball. It's just they run into these random points where they stall and have to kick field goals or throw interceptions off the receiver's hands. But in any event, the defense will do enough. The Raiders aren't that impressive. 26-13 Kansas City.
Yeah. Next up, Saints-Jets. The Saints currently in a bit of a free fall after the Jameis Winston injury. 5-7 right now. Somehow in a 4-way tie for 9th in the NFC, only a game back of San Francisco in the 7th slot right now. They desperately need a win. They get the New York Jets. 23-6 New Orleans.
6. Okay.
It's the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson had a pretty solid start last week, although he did fade away as the game progressed. But I think it'll be a little closer than that just because, New Orleans...
I mean, the Saints aren't that good.
Yeah, New Orleans has struggled quite a bit lately. I mean, I will be rooting for them as I'm starting Taysom Hill at QB against you this week. So
Oh, boy.
hoping for some rushing touchdowns, not 4 interceptions from him this week. But it's going to be close. It's probably going to be a pretty ugly game, but 24-20 New Orleans. I think we'll see a good amount of points early out of this one.
Interesting. All right. Well, we're all the same so far. I'm not sure that this next game should change anything. The Cowboys versus the football team, an interesting divisional matchup. Washington currently holding on to that 6th spot in the NFC playoff race. But the Cowboys, division leaders right now, I think that they'll keep that up against the football team. I've got 27-17 Cowboys.
Washington just lost their top 8, I'd say top 8, maybe top 6 in the league tight end, Logan Thomas, for the year with an ACL-MCL injury. So that should be a pretty solid blow to their offense, although Taylor Heineke can still scrap out some decent numbers, but you got to do a lot to beat Dallas. And, I think with the number of weapons they have, they'll be able to beat Washington just about any way they want to. It will be close because whenever that game's played at FedEx Field, it always is pretty close, but 23-20 Cowboys.
Yep. Next up, another division matchup. We got a lot of them this week. Falcons versus Panthers.
Cam Newton bounce back?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for those of you listening, you obviously can't see this, but I just kind of shrugged. I mean, Cam Newton always did like beating Atlanta, 16-13 Panthers, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
24-17 Carolina. It's just going to be a middle-of-the-road kind of game, nothing too flashy. But, 24-17 Panthers.
Next up, Seahawks Texans. It looked like Seattle finally figured it out. They looked fairly impressive last week in their win over San Francisco, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Finally figured something out. 4-8 though, so playoffs likely out of the question with them currently sitting at 15th in the NFC, ahead of only the Lions. So too late to make the playoffs. Not too late to beat the Texans, who are the only eliminated team from the playoffs so far. 24-7 Seattle.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, we're still trying to figure him out. So I've heard some rumors that he might be looking into a team like the Giants, Broncos, or the Saints. But the bottom line is he's got to get things figured out in Seattle. Did look a little bit better last week, but obviously trying to get his stats back to where he wants them after the finger injury. But it's Houston. It really doesn't matter how poorly you play. Especially when you have the offensive talent that Russell Wilson has. 28-13 Seahawks.
Next up is the Lions versus the Broncos. The Broncos currently tied for 10th in the AFC, a game back of the Colts for 9th. But they've also got the easiest game out of those 3 teams. Raiders have the Chiefs, as we mentioned. Browns have the Ravens. The Broncos get Detroit. Detroit finally got their first win of the year last year, which was great and fantastic. Good for them, good for Dan Campbell, good for Jared Goff, good for that whole team. Good on the Vikings for playing a prevent defense on 1st and 10 from the 8-yard line. But, that's the Vikings. The Broncos are a solid team, especially defensively. I think that that's been their strength all year, and I think that that will be their strength again against the Lions. I've got them winning 20-3.
And I think the rookie running back Javonte Williams out of North Carolina with Melvin Gordon out, really starting to get his looks, really starting to emerge. Had a great game in Kansas City last week. I think 29 fantasy points, something like that. Had almost 175 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. So big night for him. I think he'll continue to emerge. And against the Detroit defense, why not have a big day? 24-13 Denver.
Giants versus Chargers. Chargers currently 5th in the AFC and well within position. They control their own destiny for the wild card race. I'm not sure if they do for the division. I think the Chiefs would have the tiebreaker over them at this point. But they control their own destiny for a wild card slot. And the Giants are currently tied for 13th in the NFC. And remember, last week, the Chargers walloped the Bengals. It was not close at all, and part of the blame for that can go to Jamar Chase turning a touchdown into an interception by just kind of batting the ball backwards. That's your offensive rookie of the year right there.
Mac Jones threw 3 passes last week.
Did you see his QBR in the first half? 116.7, baby. Ooh.
On 12 yards.
You just lost to one pass Mac. Deal with it. Yeah. Chargers dominated the Bengals. Imagine what they're going to do to the Giants. 41-21 LA.
And Mike Glennon is the starter for the Giants. Mike Glennon versus Justin Herbert, baby.
Imagine being a New York football fan, man. That would just suck. That would just suck so much.
It's a pretty easy one. I mean, the only thing that I think could possibly hold the Chargers back are the injuries to Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen right now, although Eckler should play. 28-17 Chargers.
They've got enough offensive weapons for that to not matter too much. Next up, 49ers versus Bengals. The Bengals, as we mentioned, lost to San Diego, Los Angeles last week. The formerly San Diego Chargers. So that put the Chargers ahead of them. They're both at 7-5 right now, tied with the Bills, but it's Chargers, Bengals, Bills in that order. The Bengals have the 49ers, and the 49ers, they're a solid team right now. They're a wild card team as well, but the NFC is slightly weaker than the AFC this year, and I feel like the Bengals are a better team. 34-14 Cincinnati.
34-14?
Yeah.
Okay. This is tough for me. Cincinnati has been a pain in my hindquarters the past couple weeks because I picked them to lose to Pittsburgh, and then they blew out Pittsburgh. Then I picked them to beat the Chargers, and they got blown out by the Chargers. So what do I do here? I'm going to take San Francisco. 27-23.
No, you're not.
Yes, I will.
You really want to go down 2?
I'm not going to go to... I got to go with something here. I don't want to match you this week.
Then go with Bills Buccaneers or something.
No. I'm not picking against Brady.
You picked against Belichick last week.
Well, it's against the Bills. He lost to the Bills twice last year. So... I don't necessarily trust the way Cincinnati has been starting games. And I think San Francisco is a team that can come out and run the football.
Okay.
And I think they can control the ball well. They have the offensive talent to do it. And I'll take them to beat Cincinnati 27-23. They beat the Rams. They're not as bad as you think.
Yeah, but they're not as good as Cincinnati.
Cincinnati has had some stinkers.
They've also got Joe Burrow.
Okay, and the 49ers have George Kittle and Elijah Mitchell. They've got... Their offensive talent is very close to that of the Bengals.
Okay. When Jamar Chase is not handing the football to the other team, the Bengals are a vastly superior team. Right. I'm sorry.
Anyway.
All right. Next up, the game I just mentioned, Bills Buccaneers. Imagine dealing with Belichick and then going down to Florida to deal with Brady. It's pretty tough for the Bills, and they are desperately trying to hold on to that wild card slot, but I don't think they're able to. I've got the Buccaneers 31-27.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going against Tom Brady, especially against a highly inconsistent Buffalo team. I think it could be a lot like that Tampa Bay-Kansas City game from last year, just the other way around.
The Super Bowl? Or?
No, the first one. I had all the hype coming into it, and then one team kind of dominated the other, but it ended up being a little closer. I think it goes fairly similar here. 27-24 Bucks.
All right, yeah, that's fair. Sunday night game, it's Bears-Packers. He still owns them.
Yeah.
28-13, Green Bay.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers historically against the Bears.
Good.
Yeah.
Also, it's the Bears.
Yeah, there was a Sunday night game against the Bears last year. Dominated them. Javonte Adams, I think, might have had 3 touchdowns. I still remember that game in 2013 or 14 that was on Sunday Night Football where it was like 35-0 by halftime.
Wait, was that the one where like B.J. Raji got a pick 6?
Oh, I don't know. It might have been.
Because I know that
crazy things happened in that game.
Because it was Joe Buck calling the game and he's like,
oh no, this was Sunday Night Football. Al Michaels and Chris.
Maybe would it have been it was a playoff game, I think.
It was in Chicago.
Yeah.
But the one I'm talking about was at Lambeau.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sunday Night Football, Rodgers versus the Bears, 31-13 Green Bay.
Yeah. Sunday night game could be fairly interesting. I think it's going to be pretty close, but to me it does not look like the Rams are as good as they were to start the year. I'm not sure what's going on with the team. I don't know if it's that Stafford peaked too early. I don't know if it's that they're struggling more with the loss of Robert Woods than we originally thought they would. But the Rams fell off, and the Cardinals, despite injuries to Kyler Murray and a good chunk of their offensive core, they still haven't. Now that offensive core is getting back, they're one of the most dangerous teams in football. I've got 24-20 Arizona.
Oh, we're going to have 2 games.
Oh, boy.
I know you think LA fell off, but they crushed Jacksonville.
Oh!
Oh, okay. Well, tell me about how Buffalo did against Jacksonville. When you blow out the teams you're supposed to blow out, good job.
Yes.
So, I mean,
that's a pat on the head.
Any given win is a win.
Yeah, but
look at what Buffalo did.
That's not an A+. You're saying that the Rams beating a 2-10 Jacksonville team is an A+. No, that's like a B-. You did what you were supposed to do. Do you want a medal? They haven't beaten a good team in a long time. Like, going and looking at their schedule, they got mollywopped by the Packers, to be quite frank. Let's see. I mean, 8-4. They're a solid team. They're going to make the playoffs. Don't get me wrong with that. But I don't think they're going to do very good in the playoffs. Like, they beat the Rams. They beat the Colts. They beat the Buccaneers to start the year. Cardinals beat them by 17. Beat the Seahawks, which is Giants, which is Barely beat the Lions by 9. Beat the Texans. Lost to the Titans. Lost to the 49ers by 21. Lost to the Packers by 8, and that game was not as close as that score appears. Like, their best win since Tampa Bay in Week 3 is, I don't know. It might actually be the Jaguars.
Hold on a second. There's another factor I need to tell you about here.
Lord almighty.
With this game. How long's it been? The Rams have not lost a game in Arizona since 2014.
Well, that streak is about to change, Tyler.
No, it won't.
I mean,
Rams 30, Cardinals 24.
No, it's 24-20. Like, just look at their schedule. Since they beat the Buccaneers, the Cardinals crushed them. Barely beat the Seahawks. Like, if the Seahawks or the Giants are your best win since Week 3, and we're on to, what is it now, Week 14, you are not a good team anymore.
They've got to turn around at some point. I think this is the time to do it.
I don't think they're going to be able to because of the Cardinals' talent. The Cardinals are more talented than the Rams right now. That's just how it works.
They're playing better than the Rams. They're not more talented.
The
Rams have a better.
It's close.
The Rams have a better defense, I think, but.
Maybe.
Arizona's just outplaying them at the moment, but I think they'll get outplayed on Monday night. All right, 2 games, Cincinnati, San Francisco, and Arizona, LA. I hope I don't go down by 3. You seem pretty adamant that I will, but either that will happen.
I think you're going to stay down 1.
Yeah, either we'll still have me down 1, or I'll take a 1-game lead on you.
Or I'll be up 3.
Or you'll be up 3, which would be disastrous. So,
yep.
Hoping that doesn't happen, but yeah, that's about it for this episode. Very eventful one as I try to scratch my way back in the game predictions. I'm also playing you in fantasy football this week, so if predictions don't go my way, at least I'll have that. As we head into the playoffs with myself locked in as the 1 seed for our media production
and Brendan
league.
Locked in as the 2 seed.
And you shouldn't be, though. Rob has a better record than you. But
well, he's in your
whatever.
division, so he kind of gets screwed out. Sorry, Rob, but...
he's the only team that beat me, so give him credit.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so, yep, that's about it for today. Tune in to the basketball game tomorrow night, 7 p.m. against Omaha Northwest, and then Millard West to follow on Saturday at 7 p.m. Should be a fun weekend. We won't be with you again, at least on the show, until after Christmas break. So, everybody, if you don't tune in and see us on Friday night, I guess tomorrow night, have a great Christmas.
Don't forget to tune into the Christmas in the Cage broadcast.
Yep, that as well.
Saturday, December the 18th. We will be there. Also, if you see Tyler, please try to convince him to buy a suit with shorts because it looks great on the Kohl's website. So, we're starting a PR campaign, #suits with shorts. We can get that going out there. Maybe we'll finally convince Tyler to get one. So,
goodness.
Thank you
You're
all
gonna start
for participating.
You're going to start a petition?
I'm going to start a change.org.
Gosh.
Make us wear suits with shorts.
All right, so, yep, suits with shorts and basketball games. So, have a great Christmas, everybody. If you don't see us between now and then, have a great New Year's as well. Just stay safe this holiday season, and have a good one. We'll see you on the show after Christmas break, and we'll see you tomorrow night for basketball.